Hello and welcome everyone to the Movement Made Better podcast. Today's guest, we're excited to have Doug Sheppard. He is the owner of J&D Fitness out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Doug, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners, please.
Hey, well, first I want to thank you guys for having me on. It's a great opportunity. I love the stuff you guys are doing. I'm actually a fan of your podcast. So I appreciate you guys having me on. So you guys have really good people on this. I don't know if, hopefully I won't drop the ball on this one, the pressure's on. But yeah, been in the industry 30 years. So I'm one of the old guys. I'm 50, going to be 51 in a few months. And I can tell people it's been my only job, 21 years of age, man, junior in college. I'm so old. My first job was at a Bally's Total Fitness. I'm aging myself here, man. But
that was my first job.
yeah. First 3 years. First 3 years I did work for somebody. And then 24, man, I've never kind of looked back and have kind of been my own, working for myself ever since. Started in the New York area. That's where I started my career. And then my wife and I, we migrated to Vegas in 2003. But I've kind of gone through it. After school, I was a wrestler in football, needed a new sport, got into the bodybuilding thing, did kind of well in that, won junior nationals, did that whole thing for about 10 years. And like a lot of people, right? Like that was, I always say in the 90s, that was it. That's all we saw. If anyone ever says like they didn't start with routines from Flex and Muscle Fitness, you're lying, because that's all there was, right? Like I've told people, three people I lean on a lot: Mike Boyle, Ray Cook, and Alan Cosgrove, right? Mike Boyle is one of the first guys who I love seeing a lot of his stuff, where he took this simple layman's approach, took the science and the research and said, okay, how am I going to apply it, right, to the people walking through my door? But like, I didn't come across Mike Boyle until about 2010, 2008, going back then. Same thing. I say, Gray Cook, we use the screen. I'm a huge fan of it. I'm FMS certified, started screening people, 10 years ago, but early in my career, wasn't around. He didn't write movement yet, I run a semi-private personal training private studio, and a lot of the things I modeled when I wanted to open my place was Alan Cosgrove. Same thing. They've been around 20 years. So when I started 30 years ago, a lot of these guys who are leaders in our industry, I probably, like a lot of people, just learned by doing a lot of dumb things, figuring stuff out, and really having my own laboratory. It's like you try things and point blank, you try things and say, I'm not getting results. It's not working, or, or injury or things like that. But kind of went through the bodybuilding world. 2000, went to an NSCA conference, seeing this guy, Juan Carlos Santana, talking about this thing called functional training, which blew my mind. So I kind of went from bodybuilder in 2000 to I want to stand on a stability ball. So probably like a lot of people, kind of evolved into the whole functional training world. And like a lot of us, went so extreme, right? Not a little bit. I went from just wanting to be a bodybuilder to just, again, on a bongo board, single leg bent row, so extreme, right? And then kind of learned to bring that back under control. And then, like I said, really it was the maybe 2004, 2005, where I really started I got heavily involved with the NSCA. I was the state chairman for Nevada for 7 years. Got really involved with them because I started just digging deep into the research. That's when I started reading the Stu McGill. That's when I started going through the journals. What's the data? Because now, when I started, a lot of stuff was philosophical, right? We didn't have the data, right? So after 10 years of doing things and 15 years of doing things, they said, okay, let's do a testing on EMG studies with suspension training. What does it tell us, right? Now we could actually have some hard data. So I think that's when I started really getting involved with that, saying I like to take this research-based approach, but to give you guys the backstory of my place, the average age of the person walking through my door is 52 years, right? So I'm a general population body comp place. People come to me, I want to drop 20 pounds. I want to get a little stronger, going on vacation. And then we start to kind of educate them on the benefits of movement, right? Because that's always we have our success session. We got a screening of questions, goals, and we do this whole assessment. And it's always yeah, I guess I can move better. And then we start we do an assessment. And after a week in our place, they're like, God, I need to move better. They kind of see the benefit. Most people don't understand the benefit, but kind of got involved again with just the research and how I can apply that in a practical way, to the people that come through my door. As I said, I'm RKC, FMS, we are a TRX studio, DVRT studio. So I kind of run the gamut. A lot of the names out there that a lot of people hopefully are using now, I think the industry that's kind of made this shift to now movement-based stuff. 10 years ago, you may have been a little bit of an outlier. I think we're all getting more into that, which is good. I think that's a good thing. We're not doing the body part training anymore. But like I said, that being said, a lot of times I can go to all these conferences and get the book, and it's like, okay, it's great, right? And I have someone I can go see Mark Verstegen speak, and I love Mark, and he's amazing, right? But like Mark's working with athletes, and then like I said, I got this kyphotic 60-year-old gentleman who's walking in my place, and a lot of that stuff we're not going to be able to apply, right? Like a lot of the stuff to people, that's kind of where we're at. I like to see how can I apply, again, movement-based stuff, getting people strong, getting them moving well. And for the most part, people that walk through our door, I think about 89%, based on my last check on our analytics, they're looking to drop body fat. So that's kind of my world and the people we deal with.
So when you were doing your bodybuilding, looking back, if you had to redo that again, if you could go back in time, what's one or two things that you would do differently?
That's interesting. It's one of those things that when I was lucky enough for anyone who's in that world, the gym that when I started working for myself and I was an independent contractor, like a lot of people, I was renting space in this gym. It's pretty famous. They call it the East Coast Mecca. It used to be a Gold's, now it's Bev Francis Powerhouse Gym.
Yep.
So Steve Weinberger, top IFBB judge, NPC, Jim Mangan. So that was the gym that I was renting. I became really good friends with Steve. So that's even before I moved into Vegas, and Jay Cutler lives there. I was friendly with Jay because he'd come to New York, and Steve, and I've got friendly with Dorian Yates, and that was an era, and Kevin Levrone, and all these names and these guys in the industry. So I when I got out of the sport, I was a little bit of an angry bodybuilder because, like I said, it was going in a direction I wasn't so happy with, and just obvious, like some of the drug usage and stuff like that, and away from the training. But the one thing that I think bodybuilding gave me was, again, working for strength. Because I think in that era, you go back, and I was that guy reading some of the early Mike Metzer and Heavy Duty that Dorian Yates applied, and learning about true intensity, which now, everyone does HIIT training, right? But I remember looking back in the 90s where it was about generating intensity, and getting strong, and you can't sprint a marathon. So I kind of adopted that. I think looking back on the whole thing as a 51-year now who's, has herniated disc and stuff like that, I think sometimes the volume of training and I think not giving, trying to out-train recovery, which in that type sense, I think, doing that 5 days and, 2-a-day workouts and stuff like that. And not, now that I wear an Oura ring and I'm looking at my HRV every morning, and looking at things like that, I wish I would have paid probably a little more attention to that. I was always into stretching, right? Because now we know the difference stretching and mobility, right? I wasn't, now we know about the nervous system, and we're looking at joint caps and all these other benefits. So I think I had that. I wish I would have definitely had a little bit more motor control and stuff like that. But like I said, going back, I don't think we were all aware of the importance of that. I will say when I was bodybuilding too, I was lucky, knock on wood, I didn't experience a lot of injuries. Okay. But, the trauma that can come along as we're learning what can happen with that, right? And then trying to reboot, and correct these patterns after injuries. But, like I said, with the bodybuilding, I wish I would have got a little bit more movement. But for that, in that application, where the goal is hypertrophy, it's size, right? Like we always say, like tonight we got the NFL draft, and, they always say, like, you don't, look like Tarzan, play like Jane. You want to train for go, not show. Well, in bodybuilding, it actually is train for show. Show, yeah. Right. And I've written about a blog article. I always tell people, so it's, and guys, I can get long-winded, so you can just stop me whenever.
No, you go ahead.
I got to give it a backdrop. So it's 2001. Now, like I said, I had a pretty decent amateur bodybuilding career. I did win the junior nationals light heavyweight. I didn't win the overall. I was a favorite for USTA, kind of just walked away. So I was one step away from a pro qualifier. Did well in the sport, and so feeling probably good at myself, right? And now I leave that, but I'm still at the time probably walking around at a weight of 225, sub 7% body fat, 5'9", all of me, right? And I go to my wife has a family reunion. That's time actually we're not even married. It's my wife at the time we're engaged. So they have my wife, big Italian family. So what do you do at family reunions, right? You eat an Italian family, we're drinking beer, having lasagna, then you got a softball game. So, I have all her family, and they're all kind of poking at me, the bodybuilder, let's go play softball. But I'm thinking, I'm the fit guy here, right? Like, I got no look at me, right? These guys, Ellie's, you guys, they haven't even looked at a gym, right? And maybe Thigh Master or something, right? And I remember, I to this day, I love this. So I go up to bat, and I remember I hit this thing, ball's gone. I take off, I run the first, I sprint. God knows I probably had not sprinted in 10 years, and I pull up like grabbing my hamstring, you know? And then and I remember that day watching these guys who to me had no physical attributes, never worked out. They're running around the bases. And I'm like, what's wrong with this picture? Right? Because I can go in the leg press and load it up with a lot of plates, right? And I can squat. And I told you, it was during this time. So again, I'm going back pre-2000. And I told you, and then I go to this NSCA conference and I'm getting into this functional. And I kept saying, okay, gym strong, did it really apply over to moving? And then I always say, it was just a recreational thing that we should all do, right? Like, I shouldn't have to train to go to a family reunion and play a pickup game of softball. And my background, remember now, high school, college, I was a wrestler and a football player. So I came from an athletic background and world. And kind of after school, it was like, what's my sport? I wasn't doing any pro stuff. I kind of migrated to bodybuilding for, 9-10 years. But so I did it at one point in my life, and I had lost this quality of movement. It was like, what? Something, and that's where some of the questions started. And I think it probably got me down that rabbit hole of looking, it's really defined strength, right? And, like I said, and have the ability to use the strength in different ranges of motion. And that really opened me up when I started saying, I want to have endurance and I want to be strong. I still want to pull a big weight off the ground, right? But like I would want to go and do a 5K, and then do pull-ups. And then also, like I said, I should have a hard time getting up off the ground, And so I started going down this really defining, which for me, strength was a component of this aesthetics, right? And I always tell people, I love the aesthetics too. We all want to look good with our shirt off on vacation. I'm not, sometimes I think the functional movement people, we get a bad rap because people think you care nothing about aesthetics, right? If you're functional, that doesn't mean I want to have a belly. I want, I want low body fat, things like that too. I think, again, if I could, and I know you asked for the time and I told you how to build a watch, but in essence, I think getting some component of athleticism, I wish I would have still incorporated a little bit when I was doing the bodybuilding, just some component, and really where it was just totally eliminated that. And some people will say this. I've had this discussion with Greg Cook, and he'll say with Brett Jones, when Brett puts down the kettlebell and focuses on more deadlifts, it comes at a sacrifice to his movement quality, right? So, you go back and forth, and then he'll go back and be back with his kettlebell, and now he's not doing sets of 3 and 5 in his deadlift and do his kettlebell. And so you'll see that, I think there's a trade-off when you start to go down certain roads, you sacrifice in the other, and I think but again, I don't think I would have excelled in the bodybuilding world. I would have come at a price.
Well, Dennis and I, we know a bodybuilder, and he threw out his back playing mini golf.
I'm not surprised. So I'll give you, here's another one. So you want to talk back. So back when I was in New York, I was lucky enough, I trained and worked with a bunch of NFL guys. And I was able to work with a few guys who were on, this is the Cleveland Browns before they went to the Ravens. And it's actually under Belichick. So a few guys, I worked with a few who went into the Ravens. But nonetheless, last game in Cleveland Stadium, the old dog pound, I was able to go down there and watch that game. Two guys I work with. And one of the athletes, I don't want to say his name because he'll get really mad that the story gets out, but he threw his back out, brushing his teeth, and the foam from the toothpaste tickled his nose. He sneezed. Now he's in that flex position.
Yeah.
Threw his back out. He missed practice. Okay. So again, NFL is when you don't miss practice. There's a Wednesday, which is, again, if people follow sport, that's a big day, preparation. So Wednesday practice, misses it. Agent, nobody knows where he is. This isn't a big deal. So people are like looking for him, contacting what's going on. But a buddy goes by his house who had a key to the house, opens the door, gets into the house. And as he tells me the story, he's like, he suddenly hears this faint voice, hey. And so you get nervous, you come in the house and you hear it going, you don't know what you're going to see, right? So he hears this faint voice and he's like, all right. So goes up the stairs. And this guy had been locked up for 8 hours and couldn't move over the sink. And I'll give a position, but he's a middle linebacker, pretty fit guy. Okay. Yeah. By all means, if we saw him, as they say, in the underwear Olympics, that, people would be like, this guy's jacked. Threw out his back sneezing. So you're right. So you hear stories like that, right? And it just blows my mind. But I was like, come on. To the point I could not move. I was locked up, And so, yeah, I'm not surprised with that.
Have you found a good way though to, infuse some of that bodybuilding practice you did before with all the movement stuff? Do you do that?
Oh, yeah. I've had this discussion with people, right? And I'm lucky enough, I have 4 coaches that work on my team with me. And when I bring on a coach, part of it is, I always tell them, it's like the education and the psychological part, right? I think being a coach, it's really 3 components. Your foundation is you have to know your kinesiology, physiology, and that you have to know that, right? You got to know movement. You have to know your exercises. I think some people think that's where it ends. And I go, no, then you got to learn to be a good communicator, right? Because it's not what I know, it's what I can teach and what I can explain to. I always love teachers of anything. I love listening to someone who can take a very complex thing and make it sound very simplistic. So that's part of our job too, because again, I deal with general population. They don't want to know the benefits of a kettlebell swing. They just want to drop body fat, even though I know we're going to probably incorporate that. So it's being a good communicator. And then the third part is the psychology. It's like knowing the personality, introverted, extroverted. This person likes data. This person, it's really knowing and reading the personality. So that being said, one of the things is I always tell people, it's letting them know upfront, benefits. Why? I think our industry, sometimes we just say, let's do it. Right? I see a young trainer and I'm like, if you can't give someone the benefits of why, I'm big on always, there's a why behind everything we do in our studio, from the way we format our warm up, from the tissue work we do, we have 4 different small group workouts. I mean, some are more strength, some are more HIIT fat burning, some are more mobility centric. I mean, from our breathing protocol, everything. And I tell them, if I can't give you a why, then why are we doing it? I should give you some reason, right? There has to be, even if it's a philosophical. I mean, not everything has data, and we know that, right? But at least we have to say, we've seen this. And I'm lucky enough that, I would say I use my studio as a laboratory, because we'll get 30 or 40 people through our door daily. So, course of a week, we get 140, 150 workouts done in a month, and you start to literally see the data. You start to see things, and we wear heart monitors. So I can start seeing, and we do different things, checking mobility and reassess them on a screen. And somebody was this, they were a 1 and now they're a 2. So it's really being able, I think from day one, everything you do with people, it's really explaining why, right? And if someone says, oh, okay, I see that. But instead of just saying, we're going to do this, right? I think it's really important. And knowing it's got to always cater back to their goals and objectives, right? It has to come back to that. So I may screen somebody, to give an example, and I will tell someone, this is more for me, right? Because they came in and dropped body fat. They can care less about an FMS. They don't know Cook, Gray, what, they don't, I don't care, and all of this, and bilateral, that I want to drop 20 pounds, right? So I tell them, this is a tool for me. So when I'm creating your program, we can jump in. We're not going to waste time. We can jump in feet first. I can meet you at the level you're at, and I'm going to keep you safe. Because at the end of the day, I can't get you fit if you have an injury, right? And that's their why on that, right? They don't, okay, we'll do this, fine. I know you're not going to, it minimizes my risk of getting hurt, in the studio. So I think a why is important, because I think a lot of people, and I'm that guy, I love listening to people speak, but I'm not intimidated to go, can you explain why you're doing that? I just love to go, why? And I'll question things. I'm a big one to question things. About 2011, 2012 was when I started getting involved with kettlebells. I'm an RKC. I go to, Brett Jones is my master RKC, and I'm great friends with Brett now. But I remember when I first started implementing and doing things with kettlebells, right? And, they have their core movements that you do with that. When I opened my gym, my big thing is a hip hinge. I wanted everyone, if it's an appropriate and they had good pelvic stability and hamstring mobility, I wanted to get people swinging the bell. I thought, especially for fat loss, a great drill, get them deadlifting, get them swinging. We start them on the ground, get them up and going. One of the movements we don't do is the snatch in my gym. We don't do it, right? It's not in our protocol. It's like certain drills. We don't do burpees. We don't do it. And the reason being is I typically always look at I look at the middle, the bulk of my people coming through my door. And most of my people don't have adequate shoulder stability and thoracic mobility for the catch of a snatch. So years later, I remember seeing some of my old RKC brethren, and we're talking about gyms, and they're like, you don't do that. And I go, no, it's just, it doesn't fit my clientele. That in my own workout, I love a snatch, and probably out of 100 people, I imagine I could say maybe 20 or 30 may be good candidates for it. But, I look at the majority, it's not. So there's so many other drills, God knows, that we can do instead of that to address that. So I'm a big one where I have no problem saying this is why. I'm not going to do it because I mean, and we have to do, our get up. Yeah, same thing. I've said that we do get ups, we do partial get ups. I think it gets to a point where the skill level gets too high. And with my population, I don't have someone coming through my door saying, make me a better kettlebell practitioner, right? Like I said, I got person wants to, I want to get stronger. I want to drop body fat. And after about 2 weeks, they go, yeah, I need to move better too. That we got to educate them on,
Right.
I think it's having the why, why you're doing something, and really understanding it. Not just, again, our industry, God bless them, especially with young trainers, they have a way of regurgitating something they just heard from someone really smart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can get Sarah Salmon's book and I pick it up and I'm reading Stu McGill stuff. And I'm not embarrassed. It takes me, it's like reading the Bible. I got to take time to think about it,
Yep.
right? I remember someone once gave me, I'm reading the Diane Ling, the pelvic girdle. I mean, this is like, I'm reading 2 or 3 pages at a time. This is not, I'm not cranking through this like a power novel, because to really understand applications of what you're trying to do. But I want to really be able to break this down and know what I'm doing, not where I could just raise you something and just, throw it up on you. And I'm just repeating what you're doing. Because then if I have to progress it and regress it,
Mm-hmm.
you understand concepts, you can do that, right? Because you'll say, okay, I get the concept, what we're trying to apply here. And I know what I got to do. Okay, I can adjust and change that up.
And that's a great aspect, is understanding just to take little bits, digest it, process it, and then figure out where that fits in the whole spectrum. That definitely, I don't think, is done enough.
But I can tell you, funny story. Dennis, I remember the first time I got experienced the sticks. And and this has happened, right? This is classic trainers, and I'll fall into this. We walk with this level of arrogance, like we got it all figured out, And so it was it was at a functional training summit. I remember I bring my team up and it's a breakout and you've got your booth in the back. And I'm like, okay, give me the skinny, hit the sticks. And it's the same thing. I've told people this story and I said, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. It's, again, I'm going to age myself. Old classic, White Man Can't Jump. Wesley Snipes, right?
Of course, yeah.
If you remember in there's a scene, Woody Harrelson, they're driving, puts on the cassette of Jimi Hendrix, and they get this little argument, right? And it's like, he goes, I like listening to Jimmy. He goes, you listen, but you can't hear. Well, with mobility sticks, like I was listening, I couldn't hear it, right? So it was one of these things I really, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, in my first thing, I wear a few different hats. I'm going to wear the coach. I want to know that, science part, okay, fascia lines, I'm getting it, good tension, okay. Then I kind of wear the operator hat, like, okay, now is this going to be something I'll be able to teach easy to my guys, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and they're not even the guys with me, because you got to look at it, the next trainer you hire, right? And they may be a beginner. They're going to be able to apply this and then teach it. Is this something I got to have a high skill level? Can they learn it in a few months and be off and running and at least have a good basic? And then I'm the owner, right? Like I run my place. So I'm going to be like, is it going to be something that's an expense we're replacing? And I say, I kind of go through that because I got coaches, they see bright, shiny new toy. Every other my coach is always like, hey, why don't we start this? And I'm like, okay, breathe, take a second back. But with the sticks, I remember that weekend, I was like, okay, and we purchased some. And I always like to go back and then just play with something myself for months, right? I don't apply it in our studio. I always tell guys, that's when we got to become practitioners of it. And it took me 2-3 months. And then I had this like light switch go on, because one of the bigger challenges, especially dealing, like, again, my population, I deal with an older population. And, one of the things when we're trying to get people strong, creating tension through the body, right? And I've said this, and I'm not just saying this because your podcast, the sticks are one of the best tools teaching people the concept of radiation, right? Just teaching them to create tension. We also, we use the ultimate sandbag. I love them. Similar thing. We do similar things, different tool, similar tactic, but it's trying to teach somebody to create tension through the whole body, right? And I found the learning curve on that like this, which I love. Second thing, I deal with a lot of people, beginner, intermediate level. We're at a classic boutique gym where I get it all the time. They go, I would never walk in that big box gym. They come in our place. It's a very intimate environment. My gym is, just under 3,000 square feet. So it doesn't have this hardcore feel and vibe. And I did that on purpose. Our kettlebells have colors to them. I did this on purpose. And we have open window, this sunlight, because when I worked in gyms, I started in a hardcore gym. But I always realized it was a huge demographic that wanted to come in the gym, but they're like, I'm not going in there. I know I'm fat and out of shape. Now I need to reinforce that. Or I tell people all the time, the biggest fear is nobody wants to look stupid. There's a reason machines work, right? Like I can get on this thing, kind of figure it out, put a pin, and I don't look stupid. I feel a level of competency, right? And you see people, I've been doing this circuit again. I started in Bally's, man, a 30-minute workout, take them through a circuit, and you see it. It had this quick learning curve, so people feel competent, right? I feel better. And I guess in essence, I'm in the gym, so I must be getting more fit, right? So going back to it, I deal with a lot of people, beginners, intermediates. And what I saw was the learning curve really quick, but more importantly, I have people with bad proprioception, really poor body awareness. And one of the things, like I almost try to scale that a lot too when I'm dealing with a coach. We'll have a new person, we screen them, I'm going, okay, this person, 1 to 10, 3 on proprioception. You say lift an arm, they lifted their leg, right? Like, you got the person, you say, okay, let's get a nice neutral stance, let's square your feet. And like, they have to look down and see where their feet are, right? They have none. So dealing with that, right? I'm not going to knock it. It's like knowing where their body awareness is. And the sticks, what really transferred to me was the population. It was a great tool. They were able to know. And then on top of it, almost anchor their bodies in these positions, which I really loved, you know? And like I said, and now to start to get stronger, not just get in these positions, right? Because the first thing, because I tell people, I had yoga in my studio. When I opened, I brought a great yogi in, we introduced yoga, and just wasn't a good fit for our studio. But I said with that population too, didn't really work well. And what I've said is, but I knew we needed mobility. And after, I was looking for how can I introduce more mobility, right, into our workouts, because I knew our people need to benefit from it. And we incorporate mobility in all our workouts, but I'm like, I want to really get a little bit more. I think, again, I'm looking at hip and thoracic. I'm like ankles. I'm like, good Lord, we need this. How can we improve this? And the sticks, after a few months, it worked. I beta test. I'm like a huge beta test guy. So what I'll do is we do both semi-private and private training. So what I'll do is when I ever want to introduce something, I'll take, I'll start to introduce it in the private setting, which is always a, good way to see how it's going to apply. And I literally will go after someone with the worst proprioception, if anyone's a trainer, those people you train, right? Like they're a little more challenged. And I'll say, okay, let me see, because if I can do it with them, I'm not worried about the outliers and the people with good body awareness. No, I need the person's that, like they're kyphotic, they can't move, they turn their head, there's no neck movement, their ankles, they squat. Like that's the person I'm going to say, all right, we're going to do some movement now, right? And I'm going to get them in a monkey hang, or we're going to start doing some stuff and just start playing with some of the positioning. And it was great. So like I said, it was something, and so kudos to you guys. I think it's a great tool. But like I said, like a lot of people, you don't get it. You got to play around with it a little bit. And I think that's like a lot of tools, and just understand everything that's going around. I mean, now, God, turn on Instagram and you can see Thomas Myers stuff everywhere, right? I think it's like if he got 10 cents return for every time someone took a picture next to a video and stuff like that, he'd be really, really making some dough. But nonetheless, it's like, what are you trying to do, right? Teaching people tension, getting them through these range of emotions in a safe way. That's my big thing, right? I pride myself. Nobody gets hurt in our gym, right? Like it's one of our like really core things. And like I said, it's something where you can start seeing improvement, where we can do it in our movement prep stuff and say, okay, now, and people love it, right? Like, okay, wow, I just did a dumpy squat and open it, and then, okay, now we're going to be doing some goblet squats today. And they go, wow. Like they feel this drastic improvement. And again, I don't know about other people, but in my experience, when someone says the classic, wow, I feel a difference, you just struck gold. Yeah. Right. Because they all want to feel it. Right. Sometimes you can see improvement. They may not feel it. But when I started hearing that type of stuff and, you're opening and doing things that are going, wow, this exercise feels different. I think that's pretty, that's pretty magic. I like to say, okay, we got to bottle that up a little bit more.
Oh, definitely. I think what's interesting is what you said a few minutes ago about the intimidation factor of people going into gyms. I think one of the things that I've always said to coaches is always remember where you started. And no matter how big and strong you are, you were that same 90-pound weakling, or you were that same out of shape person at one point.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that I think we tend to lose a lot of.
Yeah.
And we get that ego, or we get that arrogance.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's good that you brought that up. I like that.
Yeah. I think there's a component of coaching that sometimes you have to have empathy, right? Because I always said the person coming through my door, they don't want to not move well. I mean, in reality, they just don't move well. They don't know how they got there. I mean, now they're starting to realize that like they don't even walk to Target to get water. They get Amazon dropping it off at their front door, right? Like, but in this world we live in, right? As we've evolved, I've said it, you just go back like the last 80 years and how everything that's made life easier in certain ways, it's come at a price to our physical movement qualities, right? Like even jobs that may be considered entry-level or manual labor jobs, there's minimal movement and load on them. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, and some people say, I mean, we have governing bodies that protect, how much physical component we're going to do to someone. So even to make a living and, we look at people just their daily lives. It used to be things you had to do. I think there's something to be said about that term farm strong, right? Because it wasn't like a workout. They did it on the farm to maintain life. Right. So there was this labor component to it, being in Vegas, I've worked with a few competitive rodeo people, people do barrel racing of horses and stuff like that. And people take care of horses where it's a breath of fresh air. You hear there's a physical taking care of the horses, a physical component to something they do like daily, because you don't hear that all the time. Right. Yeah. And it's not unheard of. Like everyone's got a car, right? Kids at 16 now have a vehicle, right? So like just walking places. And so, nonetheless, society, Western culture has created this world that we're in. I'm not saying I'm sitting now as I'm talking to you guys, right? Like where years, go back when people wanted to take a break and sit, they just sat in a squat, that's how you rested. Chairs weren't always around. So nonetheless, society's created this world, and as coaches, sometimes we're big to kind of show the flaws on people. Like I said, I assess people for me, not to show them how, God, you're a hot mess. That's not my goal, right? I can give them the appropriate and the right dosage, because that's literally what you're doing, the correct dosage of exercise that's going to be appropriate for them. And as I said, too, I'm dealing with aging people, and there's something to be said about that, too, right? You can't out-train aging. There's a component that you got to take that into the formula, too.
So, you say you're doing the assessment more for yourself. Do you go over it with them right after or during, or do you just Funny. I've gone back and changed this approach, and I've discussed this with Lee and Gray, and I've said it, and they've actually, to speak to them, they've even changed their approach because, and you'll hear me, I'll use term, we screen. I don't say test, right? Because we're all wired to pass tests, right? Yep. As a kid, right? That pass or fail and stuff like that. And even I reference it to our coaches as assessment, but I'll reference a lot of times to people. I'm just going to take you through a quick screen. I'm very careful not to, because again, when someone walks into my gym, and this is just my demographic, there's a component of vulnerability you're dealing with, right? There's a thing like, I know I'm weak. I know I don't move well, body fat. A lot of times there's image issues. So I'm really careful and stuff like that, because I always like everything they do, you're coming out with a win. Right. I'm really big on that. Like, again, not to show the sports things, but it's like you'll hear the rookie quarterback at the draft tonight, but you'll hear, get them some confidence. And I'm big on that. And I don't want the first thing we're doing to be showing them, how poorly they did on something like that. Now, in hindsight, I'll go back to it. I'll have somebody 3 months later say, hey, I want to go back and we'll check maybe just two things on it. I may check somebody's hurdle step, and I may check their active straight leg raise, and then I'll reference it then. And I'll say, did you know when you were here, you were able to do this, right? And then I've had some time. They've got into our culture. They've built some rapport. They've been coming to the gym. They're probably feeling better. And I think it's appropriate there, because if you tell them what I've seen also, and this is, again, I've been doing the FMS for quite a while now, and I've seen if you even approach it, people are going to the first thing, what do they tell you? Don't work through pain, right? Great, tell you, doing your assessment. You get people going through pain, man. I want to get a 2 or 3. Right? Yeah. Like people will be doing, and like I always tell them, they come in, this last night at a gala gym, and I go, look, I purposely, you're cold. We're going to have a whole warm up. You're going to be doing some tissue work, some mobilization drills before your workout, but I want you off the street. I want to see how you move, right? I'm very careful with that, because, they're going to see improvement. I know that, but off the gate, to answer your question, I don't, because I'm very careful, because I don't want someone to start feeling like a failure. I think it's so, I think our industry just done a poor job with that, and we're quick at showing people how poor they are and how they suck. You're weak. That's your squat. Oh my God. It's like, dude, someone's just come to me, and to the point they go, I'm willing to pay you. Help me. Help me. I need your help. I cannot do this. Right. Or, I'll get some, I've tried this and I've failed, and again, I get older people. So it's a journey. Right. They've my whole life, I've never been able to do. I get a lot of that.
So I'm very careful with how we kind of approach stuff like that. So to answer, not out the gate. I may reference just the movement, what they can do now, their quality of the movement and stuff like that. But I typically like to do that down the road once we've gotten some.
Yeah, it's hard to get out of those certain phrases that unfortunately we've used for so long. I mean, it's tough because it's almost like for me, I try to program myself to say, hey, that's something we need to work on to improve. It's simply that.
Yeah.
We're just going to work on improving that. And that puts the person in a much better state of mind. Yeah. Instead of saying, oh, that is horrible.
It's true. And you're going to get them to the best they're capable of, right? Like I tell people, I'm going to maximize what you can do, right? We've had kids, and I think we've all, if anyone's done any youth fitness, right? It's like you get that high school kid and they're like, okay, now I got a competent trainer, D1 scholarship, here we go, right? Because it's just like, and I'm like, all right, we're going to make sure we're going to put you in a safe and effective program, but let's optimize what your body's capable of, right? Like if we're going to work on some power and you're a basketball player, I had a kid last year, big AAU player, and I said, I wish I could say that working with me, you will jump like Jordan, as we all watch, The Last Dance. I'm like, we're going to get your vertical. Hopefully we're going to get some improvement, but we're not going to have this seismic like off-on switch. It just doesn't work that way, right? It's like this gradual improvement. I am big on improvement in anything. If I don't see improvement, right, like I'm going to question it again. It goes back to that why. Why are we doing it? I'm not going to do it because I saw someone else that I may trust or respect doing it. If we've done this and we're doing this consistently, correctly, appropriately, right environment, 3, 4, 5 months, and we are not seeing some way that I can measurable improvement, right? Then I'm going to question. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to say we did it a week and then change, right? But I like to see some type of improvement. We're big on that. I tell people, I think this is why I'm proud of this, but like our average member stays a member of our gym about 32 months. We average about 96% retention. We were closed during the pandemic. When we opened, we had 85% of our people come right back, close to 2 months. I'm proud of that. People, they see benefit for what we're doing. But I always tell them, and I'll say this from day one, to keep us accountable. And I always say, you came in now, we may become really good friends. You'll love the culture. This is cheers, and you love coming here. But remember, you came in my door day one saying, Doug, I want to drop body fat. I want to do this. I want to get some. And if we're not getting you there, let's keep our eyes still on that goal, right? I want you to love the environment, love coaches, feel great about yourself, but still, you came to me for this. You hired us for that. So I'm going to stay true to that goal. Goals can change, and that's cool, but I'm really big on that. And I like people seeing that. I like them see, this is how you're moving better, right? You were able to pick this load up. You're stronger. And with our skin fold caliber, guess what? Body fat, but I'll do little subtle ways of doing things where they don't realize they're being assessed. Twice a year, we do big body fat challenges. And it's an optional thing. They don't have to, but I give away nice cash prizes, make it fun. And so, but it's a way where, again, I skin fold caliber. We get out the lane and I'm doing it. I'm not going to do it on their first day. Last thing I'm doing is slapping the caliber on them, right? But it gives me, we know their body fat. And I get members all the time. I love it. They're like, I remember my first challenge 4 years ago and I was like 38% body fat. And I'm like, I'm 30% body fat, And, they're seeing that. They're like, wow, on top, I've dropped this in size and they know. And I'm like, yeah, and that's my way. I don't just throw it out, but they start seeing my body fat's down, and wow, I was pressing an 8 kilo bell, now I'm pressing a 12 kilo. I remember that. And again, we got the colors. So they don't even know weights. Grab a yellow, grab a green. They're like, I used to do this, right? And they just see it. And, I used to get in a half meal to do this exercise and my hip flexors. And like, now, like I'm pressing. I can get in a half knee. I can get on both knees. I'm really comfortable. Right. So I love them. They can see the movement improvement. They see the strength. They're lifting more load and body fat changes. And I try to do these things throughout the year that they start to see that they get an improvement. So I think it's important. But I think dealing with someone initially, there's a component that your coach has to have humility and empathy. And you have to know you're dealing with a delicate situation. And I've even had the alpha dudes come in, big and all this, but deep down, there's a component of like, don't make me feel like, but I'll say, dude, I'm this way because you know what? I'm making a lot of money. I've been, my company. And I'm like, no, I get you, man. Right. Like, I don't want someone feeling bad because we'll all get ways to explain why we got there. My goal is you're here. I got to get you better.
If you look just at a general spectrum across the industry of trainers, what would you say is probably one of the biggest deficiencies in our industry as far as from a trainer perspective of either what's underutilized, so to speak?
Oh, well, I probably have had this discussion with you briefly, but I think a lot of trainers get in the industry because they enjoy exercise, right? It becomes first, it's a personal thing. I think everyone says, I work out, I enjoy it as well. I can get paid doing this all day. This is awesome. Then after a week or something, they realize I'm a teacher, right? It's like you're not about what you can do, it's what you can teach to somebody else what they can do. So then it becomes that component. Those who kind of get through that component and, not getting into like what credential, because again, there's different paths. I always say it's like running a restaurant, like you look at cooks. Some came through a culinary, some came this way. I came from Europe, right? So whether you're physical therapy, athletic trainer, personal training, went to school, whatever. But I think they get to that level of training people. And I think a lot of coaches is continuing learning of education. And I said, always learning and improving. I think that's one of the things. You get them, they get a level of competency, and then they kind of stop and say, I'm really good at this, right? And as we're learning, our industry is, it's still in its infancy, right? I mean, if you look at it, our industry's been around, we go back, 45 years, Arthur Jones, Nautilus, let's go in the 70s, right? 2021, we're going back 45 years. So like I said, this is not something we can go back 100 years and things like that. So we're constantly evolving. Just look at, again, the tool you guys look at and how the Quest for mobility now, but go back 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Like no one would, would that have been maybe as an embrace? It was more challenging because people were like, maybe doing obstacle course racing wasn't as embraced. And people may have thought to excel in sports, well, if I'm stronger, right, in the bench, they still do it in the combine, right? Like if I can bench and do this, then I'll just be a better athlete on game day. So the whole thing is just we're constantly evolving, we're constantly learning. Right. And it's like, I think a lot of coaches get in there, they're training, hey, my book of business, I'm busy. So if I'm busy, that means I'm good. And good, I don't need to learn anymore. And, like I tell people, I'm in my 30th year coaching people. I'm still always learning, I'm going, wow, I didn't get that. I totally, and I'm not ashamed of it. I rather people. Yeah. I think you get to a point in your life, you start realizing how little you do know, and I'm never embarrassed of it. I'm just like, I told you. I'm that guy, like I had no clue, and I'll read some going, wow, I totally get it. This is, mind changing to me and things like that. We'll adopt it, into something, a protocol, something we're doing in the studio. So I think to answer your question, Dennis, the industry, there's a level of competency. And then I think people kind of get away from, they get set in their ways. And then trying to introduce something new gets really challenging because you'll get a lot of, this is how I do it. And then, and you have a lot of people who will be saying, well, I'm currently successful. We have, so why should we change? We're good, right? And I'm a believer. There's always a better way. I'm going to find out if there's a better way. There's always a little bit more. And I'm not intimidated to challenge. I always say, my first 10 years of training people, right, jacked up more people than helped them, right? I didn't, but like the way we did things, I'm going to say in the 90s and 2000s, we didn't know better, right? I thought the Russian twist was a good thing. And anyone, again, if you went in gyms, they had this machine, you could do presses behind the neck, right? I mean, like things that we didn't know anything. Based on that and my experience being in this industry and making mistakes, I'm constantly like learning now. I'm joking to one of my coaches the other day, well, the importance of the big toe. You would have told me 20 years ago, I'd be having a conversation about the importance of engaging the big toe. I'd be like, how's that going to apply to leg press, right? Like, so, but that's the type of conversations and stuff I'm looking at now, right? So you start to look at it with a different, but I think that's a level of, I hate to say it, it's a maturity and an experience. You start to go, I've seen this, and I'm like, you know what, there's a better way or more we got to learn. I'm a huge Malcolm Gladwell fan. So when I get a new coach, I'm like, go get your 10,000 hours. And then I'm a fan of Daniel Coyle, in the talent code, because then I'm like, okay, you've been putting in hours of training, but what's the quality of those hours, right? Because it's not, because you get a lot of trainers go to 10,000 hours, and if you read talent code, it's like they talk about the quality of practice, right? And I tell coaches also, and you guys are experienced coaches, so you know this, right? There's those sessions you have, and I joke about it, maybe because I'm the old guy who misses sports playing them. But I feel as soon as I can be coaching, I'm in a flow state, right? Where you're just, you're aligning this person perfectly. they're getting it, you're giving the appropriate movement, the right cue, they're flowing, they're moving, and I'm like, I'm in a flow state, right? And you got those sessions. It's like you're shooting air balls too, right? You're like, right? I try this, I'm like, all right, that's not going to work. Let's try something else. So I think it's having enough of those hours in that flow state, communicating well, right? The appropriate meeting that person, like tying it together. And I tell coaches, go get some hours. I think Eric Cressy has said to me one time when I opened my place, and these guys were all great. I would go to him and say, all right, you got a million coaches working for me. Teach, like, give me that one tip, and they were always big. He's like, we get guys on our floor and like, go get some reps, go learn to coach now. Right. Yeah. Like, he's like, I got a lot of kids coming through here, in our summer program. I mean, again, you go get some reps in. I've had the same discussion with Mike Boyle, and it's like, and they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to learn how to communicate well, how to cue, and externally, all these things, and making eye contact. And instead of talking in terms that people, I say it to coaches all the time, right? We'll have a coaches meeting and we'll talk planes of motion. I'm like, don't you dare on this floor, right? Because go transverse, and now we're getting that internal, like we are going to talk like that, but like, don't even, what are you like saying, right? Don't even talk this to this person, like, I want to lose weight, right? I want to get stronger, help me move better. They could care less about, they're like, Satchel, who? Like, what are you doing, man? So it's not even, so to go back, I think it's education and staying on top of it. I told you one of my biggest fears from our pandemic was that probably pre-pandemic, I think that we were probably getting a bit of a bubble of education, but then you had to start weeding through. Because if you really wanted to go and do a career, there was something every weekend, everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And we're in an industry, there was a big market. Finally, coaches were saying, okay, there's some value, at least I think that top 10% in education. There was some flaky stuff out there too. So you had to kind of weed through it. And then, we all get shut down and it stops, and travel, just point blank, not safe. And these things have stopped. And my thing is, I'm hoping that we get back to that, that we get back to education. Because that's been my fear, because I was saying we got, a bubble, but now I'm going, gosh, at least there was education available, right? And you could go out there and get better and stuff like that. And that's one of my fears, that our industry right now is a bit of a void, because, like, again, just it wasn't safe. It wasn't a question of just, it's not the thing to do. And I'm hoping as we turn the corner, that we turn the corner with that too, and slowly start to introduce. And and it should be where it's not where people are doing it, we're fearful that they're lose money. It should be something that's profitable for people. But I think that was something that, going back, I think it helped our industry. The quality education that was available, I think that's what happened. And we all got a little bit brighter, and then it just kind of trickled down, so I'm hoping that returns.
Yeah, I think what's interesting between the live courses and learning something online is, with online, you don't have the ability to ask those questions right there to the instructor. Like, you're receiving, and then that's it.
That's it. Our industry, where it's just we get into a lot of trainers will have that kinesthetic component, right? Mm-hmm. You see it all the time. I've had this discussion with Chris Perea, Perform Better. You'll have a lecture going on and a hands-on. Hands-on's in the ballroom, because they're always going to have more coaches in there, because coaches want to move and go do the hands-on, right? Mm-hmm. Even though there'll be actually more information provided in the lecture, right? If you're going to get your information, I've had this discussion, there's more, but most coaches are going to be attracted. They want to move, get up, down. As I said, I want to feel it, just like our clients, right? They want to feel it. And I think there's a component, and like you said, and then again, I don't know, like other people, I'm not embarrassed to say it, I learned by making mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Right. I think that's a huge component of it, right? Like, again, I'm not the golfer, and I know you are, but it's like, I always tell people when they're learning functional movement and they don't perfect it, I said, well, look, if we went on the golf course, I don't think you're going to get a hole in one, right? And they're like, if you put it in the right application, they accept it. I go, you never played baseball, and I pitched the ball and you missed, you'd be like, all right, I got to keep practicing, right? And they would accept that. But in the gym setting, they want to perfect it. And I think it goes back to the world of machines, where you could perfect it. I could perfect a leg extension the first time. I got the right seating, right, which we can adjust, and they got pictures telling me, and I get that bar at the bottom across my shins right, and I sit, I get the appropriate weight. I just did 12 reps. I perfected 100%, right? And then you try to get someone to do a proper hip hinge, or you get someone to, how about this? Just to create tension, maintaining a plank. right? Let's get someone to do that. Or the one I tell all my coaches, right? Probably one of the best exercises we should all do, but one of the hardest to teach, a lunge, right? Now we're messing with decel, right? Get someone and you go in the gyms all day and you just see them done poorly. So these are hard things that are hard to be taught, to a beginner, intermediate type person. So, my thing is like, there's a component of doing something and saying, oh, the lunge, was it strength or maybe, maybe some proximal, I'm not strong enough in my core. Something's going on. That's what's pulling the hip flexors. So you're thinking legs, my quads. And it's like, I don't know about that, and you're looking at someone squat and I'm looking at their ankles. Right. And they're just thinking, and I'm just watching that ankle not move. And I'm knowing that's the issue. We got to address that first. Right. If we get that ankle moving, suddenly, guess what? Things are going to get better. Or that thoracic spine. Right. Suddenly. So it's like, and they're just thinking my quads or, glutes were the buzzword, I guess, 2 years ago. Right. And they're doing that and they still can't squat. Right. Going back to, I think there's that touching and feeling and then making a mistake. Right? Because the same thing. I've done it. I've literally gone to my gym. I typically will go to my gym when it's closed on a Sunday. I'll bring my laptop. I'll put on one of you guys' videos. I'm sitting there following you guys and doing something. Then I'll look in the mirror. I'm like, nah, I don't look like Neil. I don't look like him right now. I'm like, nope, that's wrong. Let me get back and try that. Maybe about a month I start getting it, but then what I always tell guys, what that does is when I'm coaching it, whether one of my coaches or a member, I can go, yeah, I made that same mistake. Lost your plank, and then your body got in this position, right? You stopped squeezing you. Oh, guess what? Yeah, I did that too because I stopped pressing the sticks in the ground. So I stopped creating that tension. You lost the benefit of the movement. So I think you have to make those mistakes because then it makes you a better coach. Because now we're relatable. Yes. Now if I talk to the person, they go, all right, Doug made that same mistake. I don't feel like a fool. I'm like, yeah, no, I was doing the same thing. I did a butt wink. I was you got to do this. Right? Got it? And they're like, oh, okay, got it. So I think there's that part of learning that you got to make these mistakes. And I think those mistakes and those things carry over are better. Because again, I'm a little bit, I laugh at myself, but I don't think most people will do an online webinar and look at themselves and be like, I'm wrong. They'll be like, okay, I got it. And they'll just keep moving on. Right? And you'll come to a workshop a year later with them and be like, no, you ain't got it. Right? And they're like, no, I do that. And you're like, what? No, right? And I'm hoping that's going to change. I don't think it's going to be a hockey stick, but I think it'll gradually come back. And like I said, I'm crossing my fingers for it because I think the reason I got involved years ago with the NSCA, when I came to Nevada, like I said, I moved here 18 years ago, but opened my gym about 6.5, 7 years ago. And I was the guy who I remember I always had to get in the car, get on a plane, and go to workshops, right? I'd go to NCAA Nationals. I'd go to Perform Better. Even early days, I'd go to IDEA, whatever, and I'd go to these things, and I was frustrated that a lot of things didn't come to Nevada. Nevada, funny enough, we got tons of hotel rooms, but people tell you, not a great draw, doesn't do well. So our state didn't have a lot of education, and I kind of got involved in the NSCA because I'm like, no, we need education because I said, one of the reasons a lot of people aren't willing to get on a, drive 4 hours or get on a plane and lose money training people. And, do that, go get some education. So I was a huge person of like, constantly wanting to bring education to our state. So at least people got to go, okay, you don't got to get on a plane. Get here today, a weekend, there's cost. Hey, maybe you can even work early morning or late night. You're not losing completely, days pay. But, I think just education is a big thing. And like I said, it makes our industry better. I'm lucky and I'm blessed. I work with a lot of physicians, orthopedic surgeons, general doctors, practitioners, physical therapists, and they refer quite a bit of business to us because they feel they know a few of them train in my facility. And a lot of them, they see what we do and they feel very comfortable. They see how we handle and work with our members and the programs and our approach to what we're doing. But they'll be the first. I mean, I've got a very competent orthopedic surgeon and he tells me all the time, he would do an ACL shoulder and someone says, okay, I'm going to go to the gym after I finish my 3 months of physical therapy and I got this trainer. He'd be like, no, because he's like, I don't want to put this person in harm's way. I have no idea what this person's going to do. And I just, and he says, Doug, until I met you. And even then I tell them, I have no problem proving myself to them because I get it, right? Like I always, in one of the things, we invite them to come in and show them our set. This is what we do. And they kind of start seeing our approach to how we do it. They feel comfortable and confident. And they're like, okay, I have no problem. Because for them, a lot of time, and I've had a physician say, I've had a physical therapist say, he goes, I'm physical therapy. People don't come to me to get strong. I have to correct and get them back to where they were. And he goes, Doug, you're going to know more about, strength than I am. That's not the same thing I've had and it becomes a great relationship where I go, that's getting physical therapy. I'm going to refer you to him, and I have people I send out. And I say, I think you do better now. This is getting out of our realm of what we're doing here now. And I think you need to go get some actual PT and staying within the scope of your practice. So like I said, it can be a blessing and be really good to have physicians because they get people all the time saying, okay, I'm a doctor. You've got your onset diabetes. You need to lose weight. You're frustrated about the medications. Go and get in shape. They're like, okay, well, where do I go? And they love having a resource that they can say, go to here. I feel really comfortable. They'll help you out.
For years, I've always told younger trainers that have asked, I've always said, hey, you should have a network of clinicians that you can network with and refer in and out, because that is and can be a huge, substantial part of your business practice. And a lot of these coaches that ask me, and I tell them, they don't end up doing that because I'm like, right by where we're at, we have a road called National, and there's nothing but doctors on this road. I mean, it's like a 1 mile road. And I'm like, go hit the pavement, knock on some doors, train people for free if you need to, just to establish your reputation and base.
Competency. They got to know you're competent, right?
They got to know you're competent. Yeah, exactly. But I think what's interesting is a lot of these trainers don't do it because they're intimidated.
I think there's intimidation, but you have to also recognize, right? Because people in the medical industry, they're like us, it's a service-based business. So their time is money, right? And in this day and age with insurances and things like that, right? The guys, I speak to them a lot. I mean, some of these guys who really run some really good practices, they got it down to a science, how much time I can spend with a patient and a person. And trainers have to respect, like you're not going to get a doctor to spend an hour with you. You can tell them how good you are. Like you said, I'm better at like, hey, come down to our facility, your time. And like you said, you'll get a workout, right? Like I know you're busy. So I'm not going to mess with you and things like that. And that's usually one of our biggest things. You want to come train and I'd love to take you through a workout and you can see this is what we do, but do it at your, like I said, when it's available for you and convenient. Because, we can sit and talk the jargon and stuff like that, but I like them to come and I would say, come kick the tires, right? Come see exactly what we're doing, how we're handling people and things like that, because it's also reflective on them. If they refer you to go work with this person and the person gets hurt, right? And I went to my doctor and I jacked up my shoulder. It's not good. That's not good for the doctor, right? Like, but I think that's the thing too, where as I mentioned earlier, to be a competent coach, right? Like I told you guys, my journey, it's like following this guy. And then I was a kettlebell. There's not one journey, right? And you can talk to a lot of probably yourselves, you guys. There's not this one way, do this and you're a competent coach. Even from the educational background, right? I mean, I've had this discussion. I've had trainers with masters in kinesiology, and by all means, they still got a lot to learn before they get on our floor, right? I don't mind masters, so, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, but, they haven't had experience with doing certain things. So there's different paths you can do to get to being competent. But like I said, your trainer shouldn't be embarrassed that they've kind of got to earn it, that a person's got to see what's going on. And like you said, I look at it as an investment, right? It's the same thing. I'd rather than spending money on Facebook ads or Instagram or a magazine ad that may cost this, I'm going to use that marketing spent money on this person coming in. And I want them like everybody too. I joke, I had recently had a physician. I'm like, no, he's like, you treat me just like a regular member. And I go, yeah, exactly. Like, because you want to lose, because he's like, he gained weight. He's like, he's overweight. And he's like, I need to drop body fat. And then he's like, Dad, he's doing a HIIT workout, and he's like, I'm like, no, you want to lose weight. Like, I'm not going to treat you differently than I treat them. This is our protocol. So getting someone to see improvement, right? Doing it in a safe and an effective way, right? And then, as I tell you, doctors eat it up all the time, because I tell our members, right, like, know the why. I mean, one of our things too, what I love, I mean, again, it hurts our industry, but it works well for us. I've had people move away. We've got a bunch of people move job. We're here in Vegas, so you got the Air Force Base. We've had people, gals come, husbands in the Air Force, now they move and things like that, and then come back to me. And they'll be like, I went to this gym, and like, you hear the horror stories, you know? They're like, I couldn't wait till I came back because like I didn't get this. So guess what? I worked out here for 4 years. I never even like, split a hangnail, and I went there, and then they wanted me to do this, and they didn't regress this, and my shoulders, and I had to do that, and and I got this, and then I started having to go to this chiropractor. Like, so I've had people come back and just tell me the stories, things like that. I've had people vacation homes, they go somewhere for a summer, desert again, it gets hot, so we lose people. They'll go away a month and a half, 2 months, but they still want to stay active doing something. And they get used to being coached. Because a lot of times I'll say, you could probably do this on your own. I'll set you up, stuff you can do. And we try to do that. But listen, at the end of the day, there's a level of accountability. They love coming through the door and they're like, you got me all covered, right? And I follow you guys. And you get someone who does that 4 or 5 years, 3 times a week, it's hard for them to do it on his own. So I understand that. So they'll go someplace and say, okay, I'm going to go here. Now, when I know someone in the area, I try to create a network. I've referred gyms and someone, they're going, okay, I'm right here. I'm like, I know this gym, right? We may be acquaintance. We follow similar, go there. I think they'll be great, and if they got a question, I'll get on the horn and even tell them what you're doing. You don't got to worry about it, right? Like I'll say, hey, this guy, and then I can tell a coach, this is what they do, shoulder movement, blah, blah, blah. The guy goes, oh, great. And I've done that, in different places. Like I said, it's challenging because I think sometimes when people go places, they want to do the right thing. And then at the end of the day, too, like, I don't care how great of a coach, but like they get hurt, and I question it, right? I question injuries.
I know you mentioned a couple times we got the draft first round tonight. We talk about over the years some of what we would consider silliness in the draft as far as the evaluations. At the combine, you had mentioned a little bit before about, this is the way we've done things. This is the way we still do things. What is one drill in the combine that you would take away?
Oh, come on. I get the bench press right there. Like, come on. Okay. Like that would be my first one. I question too the 40-yard dash. I'll be honest, for all players. There are guys like who's running. I mean, like an offensive lineman who's got to be fast for 5-7 yards, I mean, like running 40 yards, I would question that. I get a vertical for power output, how much power somebody could create and stuff like that. I have not been in a room and seen when teams take guys through the medical. I would like to know more in depth about that, right? I think ESPN, we see a lot of the skills challenge and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I would question again when they're doing the medical because, again, I won't mention names, but a gentleman who was a top in the second round pick, all right, he's going back more than 15 years ago, but had an ACL and was able to kind of hide it getting through the medical. And had an injury, okay? I had torn it, senior year. It was kind of under the radar, went to a private physician, end of year, and then it came out later once he gets drafted on the team. And he was able to fake it and go through a medical and they didn't detect it. So I think there's ways to cheat the system and stuff like that, And the biggest thing, and again, guys a lot smarter than me have said this, your top athletes are the best at hiding their weaknesses in the flaws.
Yeah.
Right? Like I said, go back to mine. I got general pop people. You see it. It's like glaring weaknesses. It's like hitting you over the head. You get some of these guys, right? And you see, and again, they've got weaknesses, but they've been able to hide it. Yeah. And in essence, camouflage it. And a lot of time, too, being bigger, stronger, faster, it can just, now when you're in a more level field, those weaknesses will maybe get more exploited. So that's the thing. But to answer your question, I think the bench press, I question that. I think one of the challenges, and you can look at any, and I'm not going to speak for him. This is my own Dougism, but Greg Cook, when he's been challenged with the FMS, one of the things he said and how they kind of came across, he and Lee, and when they were putting this thing to Kiesel and they were putting the screen together, because it was out of personal need, right? Mm-hmm. They were like, and they were seeing these commonalities and they and throughout the years how they tweaked and now they have their breath and motor and they've improved and done these things too. I think sometimes when you make an assessment and try to standardize it, be prepared to be attacked. Because people are going to come at you and show you, and they may have an outlier, but they'll show you, well, look, you did this and here's what's wrong with it. And I think some of the tests, people don't want to say, well, we're going to do this, because now they're going to go, okay, you've replaced that. And, they'll show you someone who may excel at that new assessment. And if the guy doesn't make the team or is out of football in 2 years, they're going to say it was a bust. Right? They're going to say that assessment was poor because this guy, we went by your assessment. So I think there's I'm going to say it's fear, right? To change things because it is accepted. And it's like, okay, we've accepted this as a protocol, muscular upper body endurance or whatever, where again, like there's no core strength in a flat bench press and we got these sport hernias and things going on. And right. So I would question that. But again, until someone's going to come up and then kind of put their stamp on it. And again, be prepared to be attacked. And be attacked by people who may have some credibility, right? It's not, you're not just going to be attacked by Joe Bob in mom's basement, wearing aluminum foil, right? We all on social media, we all got the experts. That guy, you're not worried about that guy. But you may have somebody with some credibility who's employed at a credible institution or an organization. Question that. Maybe not say you're wrong, but draw questions. And again, I think we all know we question things. People go, oh, then that means it's wrong. Right? Because I always say you can question something. There's going to be those outliers. There's a bell curve to everything, right? On both sides. I always like to look to the middle, go, well, if it's 85% good most of the time, it's kind of good, right? I mean, again, to use a common thing now, what's one of the big things, just to go COVID, efficacy, the vaccines. And, people have gotten on, well, I want 95. And it's like, the average vaccine, is like 60% efficacy, right? And we use it. So, it's still, so we can question that type of stuff and how you judge stuff. But I think that's the biggest thing. It's somebody to put their name on it and just know they're going to be just somebody, the floodgates, people are going to come at you.
What would you replace the bench press with?
I probably would do some type of trunk stability test, something in there. I don't know that because those type of athletes, you have to change it where it's relative, right? So doing a trunk stability push-up, that could be challenging again. And then, even if they were, they could hide it. So something in the component where, again, stabilizing the trunk while they're doing some type of horizontal pushing, right? Can they stabilize? And I would even try to say, can they push and pull forces, from the spine, right? While maintaining some type of trunk and core stability, some type of chop lift, something like that, some type of the way we move, some type of diagonal pattern. I definitely would do something because, again, that I would try to tie in that functional line, thoracolumbar or something. Can this guy flex the hip? I mean, if you think about it again, hurdle step, can he flex it? This hip be extended, stabilize the trunk and spine. And with those type of athletes, have something a little more challenging so we can get a barometer of strength. It doesn't have to be crazy, but some type of load capacity and put it on a scale. Because again, too, right? Like, I think it was Eric Cressy that once said it to me about like why you'll still get guys using the rear squat as much as we're seeing compressing on the spine and things like that. But, but he said to me, if you say, well, this guy can, rear squat 315 for 8 reps, we as a strength coach, you got a picture in mind. That's a pretty strong guy. So it's assigning a test to it. And then we're going to have to go a window of time where we can assign athletes to these numbers. Because I say 4.3 to you, you're like, that's fast.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So I can give you barometers in these things and we can automatically identify the athlete to it. And so I think it'll be coming up with that assessment and then going, okay, this type of athlete is here, he's at, and this type of athlete is there, and blah, blah, blah. And so that takes time. It's getting the assessment and then it's going to stand the test of time. And then you start to get a barometer where in your mind, because that's the whole thing. I could throw some of these things where we probably none of us do these things, but you'll get a picture. Okay, that's a strong guy, strong gal. They can do this now. Now I know some of the functional stuff, I tell people now, which is cool. You see someone I see a gal hold a 16 kilo kettlebell and do a pistol squat. I'm going to be like, that's a strong girl, right? Like that girl's got some strength, right? So I think we're slowly getting there in the movement world. I think some people are doing their own assessments, shoulder stability with bottoms up and endurance. And, great. They've talked about, distances, endurance stuff with carries, right? Like, getting some numbers on things like that. But look, we talked the combine. There's a sexiness to the combine too, right? Man, I watch some of it, right? Like, I come home at night, I put on ESPN eating dinner, and I'm like watching who did what, and I'm on my phone and, looking, oh, wow, someone just did how many reps, so there's an entertainment component to it too. It's a huge entertainment thing, right? So I think that's why I think even those in the know, while I think the combine, it'll be around for a while, and people are, they'll do their own assessment, but that entertainment component's going to still be there.
No, it'll always be there.
I think you could replace the bench press with like a landmine push press.
Yeah,
you get that same angle, right?
But it's vertical.
That's how they're gonna. That's how they're gonna hit people. That's how they're gonna accelerate. That's how they're gonna sprint.
Well, because we always joke, if you're determining that power output with the guy flat on his back, he sucks at his job then, because that means you're evaluating a lineman who's now on his back, who's been put there by his opponent. I would rather test his skills standing up.
Being on his feet, right? That may be better in like the Vegas sport, UFC, right? That may have more carryover to a guy on the ground. And I can generate this type of force on my back, right? And now you're like, this guy's incredibly strong. You're right. But carry, right? We use, again, I don't want to, because sometimes that functional work, but it's more functionality, like you said that, right?
Does it translate, right?
Translate over to them. And then again, right, like the game of football has become such a game of niche where it's like being good at that position. I mean, again, you have some of these hybrid guys who can be, outside linebacker, DN, or you get these guys rushing from a standing up. But for the most part, there's certain niche positions and skill sets. And that's the whole thing too, right? That's the thing, right? Like that's why these personalized workouts I think are so important, because then it's like the person's doing, at least in that sense, the skills that they need to do for their job, right? Where the combine is just set testing and things going on. I think defensively, right? They've always said like there's a level of intelligence more on the offensive side. Like offensive linemen, now the center's got to be just as intelligent as a quarterback, right?
Oh yeah.
But then like, you get on the defensive side, it's like, I need the athletes, just go blow things up, right? Quickness, reaction. You give me like the better athletes and you put them in the right scheme on defense and you see these guys excel where the offensively and scheme, timing, there's so many, how to recognize things like that, I think. So even with the intelligence, when they do some of the testing with these guys, like I said, it just matters on where they are, what are they trying to accomplish?
Yeah, and that's why I love when they say football game intelligence. They know that, Mike Singletary, I'm being a Bears fan, Mike Singletary was always my guy because it wasn't just the athleticism. It was the fact that he could read the offense. He knew what was going to happen. He understood the tendencies and he diagnosed the play before it took place.
Yeah.
So he knew where to put his teammates in the positions appropriate to that play that he saw coming up. Yeah. And that's something that's really not, it's coachable, but I think a lot of it is just instinctive.
Well, again, reps, right? You get so many reps because you want it to be a reflex. So you've done this so many times, if it's not here, it's a regression, then it's going in, and you got like 4 options, and you're just in your mind, just literally following the quarterback around,
Yeah.
So.
The one drill I watch that is the 3-cone shuttle drill.
Yeah.
I would love to see the same distances, same 3 cones, but you change the alignments.
Yeah.
Because you as an athlete can prepare for that exact alignment and practice it over and over. But as a player on the field, you got to be much more spontaneous and reactive.
So I think it would be you got to comport that game,
right?
Right? Because we again, we're in a society, right? We train for the test.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like they always said, just from day one, it's like, do you have the material down or are you just a really good test taker?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So I'd love to see that 3-cone, like they run like 5 or 6 different formations in the 3-cone. Yeah. But you as a testee don't know which one you're going to get until you line up and boom, react to that alignment.
But that's what you see with the catching drills when they do that with the receivers. That, like, again, carries a lot of weight because there's a reactionary component. Even though they can practice and they do practice that, at least, again, that day, you can't, again, it's like the quarterback's throwing it this way and stuff like that. And especially comparing when they have like their own personal day compared to going to the combine. But they can say, I got this quarterback throwing me the ball. So I even got to touch it. We got timing, right? Go to the combine, it's a totally different element, right? So there's definitely, I think that carries a bit of weight where you get these guys who, didn't drop a ball, dropped one, and you see someone like, all right, that's got a little something I'm going to take out of that,
Yeah.
But you look at you'll hear things of some of the top coaches and you'll hear them. They're like, at the end of the day, can the guy play? They're going to look at tape. I think tape's still going to dictate a lot of that. And this is going to be an interesting year too, right? But a lot of people had abbreviated seasons and things like that. So it's going to be because you even got minimal tape on a lot of guys. There was no combine. So it's just going to be a really challenging year you got guys going back, with some of these younger guys, freshman year and 3 years. And again, too, my question is like, compare like a 19-year-old to a 21-year-old kid, and you're comparing that too. So physically, like just a different person, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there are challenges with that. Now, these guys are pretty smart, and I'm assuming they're going to have some type of curve for the upside on that. But you got some of these guys that they didn't play if they're a junior, played limited last year, and say they got injured the year before and had an amazing freshman year. It's like they're really at a disadvantage because they're going to go back to that freshman year. And maybe we're just learning the scheme at that school. So it'll be, nonetheless, it's going to be entertaining.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. This is probably actually one of the first drafts in a few years that I've been pretty amped for. Gotta be honest with you. The last probably 4 or 5 years on the draft, I've been like, whatever.
Yeah.
But this is the first one where I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to sit. I'm going to be paying attention tonight to see what happens.
What number do the Bears pick?
That's irrelevant. We'll that'll be wasted. That'll be wasted anyways. So, we released one of the best cover corners in the league. So we just let him walk away. Oh, we paid you too much. No, he shuts down half the field. You paid him appropriately. Cut somebody else. So now we got to redraft another cornerback who's hopefully going to take his place. And of course, we know it's been over 7 decades since the Bears had a relevant quarterback. So
well, you can't be. I'm a Jet fan, baby. All right, so you got the extra. All right, so I joke all the time, right? I got that video of Joe running off the field, that famous footage. That game was won before I was born. All right, I turned 51 in 2 months. All right, that's all I'm going to tell you.
You've had Kenny O'Brien, you've had Boomer Esiason.
We were half away. AFC Championship game against Denver. All right, with Bill Parcells. So we've had our moments. All right, half away. So no, we've come close. But again, man, coming close only counts in horseshoes and grenades. So so I'm chill. We got the second pick, and I think they're going to pick up that kid again for BYU. So I'm pretty excited. So, but I can't wait for tonight. I think it's going to be really going to be an interesting draft.
We've got the third pick with the Niners, man.
But that's what it is. Once we get into 3 and 4, it really gets interesting because it's a lot of questions where it can go. So I think, again, it's going to be questions. I just want to see Goodell getting hugs again, right? Because last year, I remember him doing it in his basement. And remember, he did the whole thing. He was tired. He got tired at the end. So I can't wait to again, we're back to Goodell, these guys giving him the brother hug. It's great. So I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. Where can people follow you on social media, get a hold of you?
Yeah, we're easy, man. So J&D Fitness on Instagram. That's our best one. That's the one we update. We're not doing much stuff on Facebook now. Definitely would tell people to follow us there. That's where we're doing a lot of our stuff, our videos and, the culture of the studio and things like that. Best way to reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Doug. We appreciate you, man.
Guys, I appreciate you.
Great conversation. You're welcome, man. And to all our listeners out there, until next episode, be good to each other.